Welcome to the Group of Five Focus podcast, where we take some time each week to highlight a few significant G5 matchups and showcase the power of the Group of Five. I'm your host, Brian Doppel. In this episode, we have a slightly shortened version of the show, so I'll briefly recap the action from Week 7 and preview a few Week 8 games, including a fresh batch of rivalry games. And some guests will join the show to preview my game of the week. We'll get into it after the break. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place, and best of all, Anchor is totally free. Let me tell you from personal experience, when I first started this podcast, I knew about Anchor, but I wasn't sure if it was exactly the right tool for me. After a little poking around, I found that in fact it was, and when I had some questions when I first started my podcast, Anchor support was there to help. So if this sounds like it might be the tool for you to start your podcast, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, let's run through some of the interesting results from Week 7. So we'll start in the CUSA, and in Conference USA this week, UTSA improved to 5-2 overall, 3-0 in the Conference USA with a 30-10 win over the Panthers of Florida International. The quarterback for UTSA, Frank Harris, had an excellent day with 303 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns passing as well. So between that and the running game, led by Kavorian Barnes, the Roadrunners were able to secure their 3-0 start in Conference USA this year. Elsewhere in Conference USA on Saturday, UAB beat Charlotte. Western Kentucky beat Middle Tennessee in the 100 Miles of Hate rivalry game. North Texas beat Louisiana Tech, and Florida Atlantic beat Rice in the Battle of the Owls. In the American Athletic Conference, on Thursday, UCF beat Temple 70-13, and what I believe I read was the highest scoring game in UCF history, and it was pretty overwhelming. It started with at the end of the first quarter, it was 14-10 in favor of UCF, but after that, UCF just pounced, outscoring them 21-3, 21-0, and 14-0 in the remaining 3 quarters. So really solid win for UCF over the Owls of Temple. Elsewhere in the American, SMU beat Navy on Friday, Tulane beat South Florida, and ECU beat Memphis on Saturday. In the ever-confusing Mountain West, on Saturday, Utah State got a nice win over Colorado State. Utah State making a bit of a comeback here, now at 2-1 in the Mountain West. Colorado State continues to struggle at 1-5 overall and 1-1 in conference. New Mexico State got a surprise win. That's future CUSA member New Mexico State. Got a bit of a surprise win over in-state rival, the Lobos of New Mexico. They won in Las Cruces 21-9 behind quarterback Gavin Frakes there at New Mexico State. Air Force got a nice win over UNLV to improve to 2-2 in conference. UNLV and Air Force, this is an interesting matchup going into this week, but Air Force proved to be the better team, winning pretty convincingly 42-7 over the Rebels. Fresno State got a win over in-state rival San Jose State, 17-10 in that rivalry game last week. So Fresno State, who's had a difficult out-of-conference schedule, who's now 2-4 overall, is 1-1 in conference. And San Jose State, who's had a good season at 4-2 overall, is now at 2-1 in conference, with this being their only loss. And Hawaii got a nice win at home over Nevada, 31-16 on Saturday night. In the Sun Belt last week, Louisiana got a nice midweek win over Marshall on the road there in Huntington, 23-13 for the Cajuns on Wednesday. On Saturday, number 25 James Madison went down to Statesboro, Georgia to play the Eagles of Georgia Southern and lost, unfortunately, losing that 25th ranking and that perfect season up until this point. So Georgia Southern got a nice needed win at home, 45-38. We'll see if Georgia Southern can keep that momentum going through the rest of the season. Another perfect team, the last perfect team in the Sun Belt, also lost this weekend as Old Dominion went down to Conway and played the Coastal Carolina, and Old Dominion got the win 49-21. A very nice win on the road versus an undefeated Coastal team. Just goes to show you that the Sun Belt East has all kinds of winners up and down that division. Even Old Dominion, who most folks were predicting to finish last in the division, they have a nice win here over an undefeated team. Old Dominion is now 2-0 in the Sun Belt and 3-3 overall. So the Monarchs making noise in the Sun Belt East as well. Also on Saturday, Troy beat Texas State 17-14, thus completing the circle of defeat here, where Texas State beat Appalachian, who beat Troy, who beat Texas State. So just a circle of defeat for the Sun Belt is now complete. Elsewhere in the Sun Belt on Saturday, South Alabama continued the winning, got a win over UL Monroe, kind of snuck one out there, or rather outlasted the Warhawks and won 41-34 at home. And Southern Miss got a nice home win versus Arkansas State, a narrow one at that. Came down to the fourth quarter, and Southern Miss got the win 20-19 over the Red Wolves of Arkansas State. Lastly, in Week 7, in the MAC, Central Michigan got a nice win, 28-21 on the road in Akron, whose struggles continue in the MAC. They're 1-6 overall and 0-3 in conference. Miami, who'd been doing well so far this year, was handed a loss on the road as well at Bowling Green on Saturday, who won 17-13. Buffalo beat out-of-conference opponent in UMass on the road as well, 34-7. Ball State played UConn at home and got a win 25-21. In a game that a lot of people were looking at in the MAC this week between Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan. Northern Illinois got their first in-conference win, and a convincing one too, 39-10 over Eastern Michigan, who had just been cruising through their schedule so far. So an interesting result there, but the Huskies of Northern Illinois got their first in-conference win of the season. And in last week's game of the week, Toledo came away with the win over Kent State, 52-31. A nice margin there. Toledo improves to 3-0 in conference, and they're looking like the team to beat in the MAC. And lastly, Ohio beat Western Michigan on the road, 33-14. Western Michigan now at 2-5 and 1-2 in conference, so their struggles are continuing, while Ohio's at 4-3 overall and 2-1 in the MAC, perhaps a little bit better than some people might have expected them to be at this point of the season. Moving on to Week 8 play, let's look at the American Athletic Conference on Friday. Tulsa goes to Temple in what should be an interesting matchup there. Temple coming off a pretty significant beatdown at UCF, but Tulsa also looking for a nice win here behind quarterback Davis Brin. Tulsa, who just lost to Navy last week, looking for a bit of a bounce-back game here versus Temple. So it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on Friday evening in primetime, 7:30 on ESPN2. On Saturday, number 21, Cincinnati goes to SMU. Houston plays at Navy. Memphis plays at number 25, Tulane. So you'll note that now as of this week, the American Athletic Conference has two ranked teams for the first time in several weeks this season, with Cincinnati at 21 and Tulane at 25. And UCF goes to Greenville, North Carolina to play the ECU Pirates at 7:30 on Saturday, and that game's on ESPNU. Conference USA also has a Friday night matchup between UAB and Western Kentucky. They're in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That game's at 8 p.m. and it's on CBS Sports Network. On Saturday, the CUSA madness continues with Rice at Louisiana Tech. FIU at Charlotte, North Texas at UTSA, and Florida Atlantic at UTEP. We're still not quite to MACtion, midweek MACtion, that is. So all of the MAC teams will be playing their games on Saturday, and they're all in the early slots too, between 12 and 3:30 p.m. So they'll get started. The MACtion gets started on Saturday with the Akron Zips as they travel to Kent State at 12 on ESPN+. Toledo is going to go to Buffalo in what should be an interesting matchup there. Normally, I would give Toledo all the benefits, but Buffalo can be a challenging place to play. So it's going to be, I think that'll be a tight one. I think Buffalo might give the Rockets a run for their money at home there. Bowling Green goes to Central Michigan, while Eastern Michigan goes to Ball State. And Northern Illinois, fresh off that nice win versus Eastern, goes to Ohio, who also just had a nice win last week. So another interesting matchup to keep an eye on, while Western Michigan plays at Miami this week. The Mountain West has another set of interesting games this week. They start on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. as UNLV travels to South Bend, Indiana to play Notre Dame. I don't know how or why this game got scheduled, but it is interesting that it's happening. UNLV is having a pretty good season. Notre Dame seems to be down, so I'm sure Notre Dame has all of the expectations of winning this game, but it'd be really cool to see UNLV get up there and get a win. So we'll keep an eye on that one there at 2:30 on Peacock. Hawaii is traveling to Colorado State on Saturday. San Jose State is going to New Mexico State, while New Mexico hosts Fresno State. A big game in the Mountain West this weekend is between Boise State and Air Force. This is a game that could very well decide the Mountain West Mountain Division. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on this game at 7 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. And Utah State is playing at Wyoming on Saturday. And for our late game on Saturday night, San Diego State is at Nevada at 10:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. So some good ones to keep an eye out for during the day, and also for us who have earlier bedtimes to watch the highlights of on Sunday. And there's a couple of midweek games in the Sun Belt this week as Georgia State plays at Appalachian State on Wednesday. Depending on when this episode gets released, it will likely be either Wednesday or Thursday. So this either will be or has been a very interesting game. Georgia State, who's been struggling this season but has been getting back on track as of late, and App State, who has just been all over the board this season, coming off a loss at Texas State last week. But this game is at Kid Brewer Stadium. It's here in Boone, North Carolina, where I am, and I know for a fact that it's supposed to be cold tomorrow night. So the Panthers coming up from Atlanta might not be prepared for this cold weather. So that might have an impact on this game as well. But should be a really interesting game here in Boone between the Panthers and the Mountaineers. On Thursday, Troy is going to South Alabama in what is going to be an excellent game between two teams who are vying for the top of the Sun Belt West. And on Saturday, UL Monroe is going to Army in an out-of-conference game. Marshall is going to JMU for James Madison's homecoming game. Georgia Southern is traveling up the road to Old Dominion. Arkansas State is going down the road to Louisiana. And Southern Miss is heading over to San Marcos to play Texas State. We've got a few interesting rivalry games being played this week. The first one is between Akron and Kent State. That game has been played since 1923, and they play for the Wagon Wheel Trophy. So this game should be very interesting. Two teams that are not playing particularly well this season, but Kent State certainly has the advantage as the home team, and also Akron just doesn't have much to hold its hat on right now, to hang its hat on at the moment. So we'll see how it goes between Kent State and Akron. Akron does have the historic advantage here at 35 to 27 with two ties, but the last three games have been all Kent State, and by pretty wide margins too, including last year where Kent State won 38-0. So an interesting rivalry, but I'm not sure it's going to be a very close one this year. Also in the Mountain West, we've got the Bridgers battle between Utah State and Wyoming. They play for the Bridger rifle, and that game's been played since 1903. So another extremely old game between two teams who are very familiar with each other. And historically, again, Utah State has the advantage, a pretty significant one, 40-27, and with four ties as well. But Wyoming handled Utah State last year 44-17. So Wyoming with the advantage statistically going into this game, but Utah State has been doing well the last couple of games with wins versus Air Force and at Colorado State. Wyoming coming off a couple of losses and a win last week at New Mexico. So we'll see how this one goes. But at the very least, it'll be an exciting game out west on Saturday. Another rivalry that I'm very excited about is the Battle for the Belt, a fairly young rivalry. It's only been played since 2012 between South Alabama and Troy, two teams in the Sun Belt West that, like I said, don't have a ton of history, but absolutely do have a lot of animosity towards each other, but also a lot of respect. And I think it's going to be interesting because of the position that these two teams are in. South Alabama is 2-0 in conference. Troy is 3-1 in conference. This game could very well end up deciding the Sun Belt West, depending on, of course, how some of these other teams are doing. Really, after South Alabama and Troy, everyone else in the Sun Belt West has one win. So in conference, that is. So yeah, this if these two teams continue to play and win consistently, this game could end up very well being the tiebreaker. So a very exciting game on ESPNU at 7:30 on Saturday. Moving on to my matchup of the week. This week, my matchup of the week is between the North Texas Mean Green and the UTSA Roadrunners. This matchup is on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas, and inexplicably, you can only watch it in person or illegally, apparently. I can't find the streaming information for this game anywhere. Conference USA, what are you doing? And why are you doing this to me? Anyway, to help me preview this game, I reached out to Jared Kalmus at Alamo Dome Audible and Sonoe Valente from the Mean Green Show. So let's go ahead and hear from them now.
Hey guys, this is Jared Kalmus here. I am one of the co-hosts of the Alamo Dome Audible podcast, and I'm here to give you guys a little bit of a UTSA perspective on what I think is going to be one of the more entertaining and highly anticipated G5 matchup games of the week, and probably one of the better ones for this season. UTSA and North Texas both come into this game with the perfect records in conference play. Both of them are moving on to the AAC together and are excited to grow their programs in the American Athletic Conference with all the different additional exposure and TV revenue that's going to bring. But Conference USA has been pretty good to both programs, I would say. And it's been good to a rivalry that I think most people outside the state of Texas may not realize is really quite intense and quite storied in such a short amount of time. It's been a very back and forth series. The longest win streak in the series is just 3 games in favor of the Mean Green. Average margin of victory is quite low as well. And it seems like so many years, the team that's not anticipated to win it comes away with the victory. And last season is a great example of that. I think UTSA was ranked 15th at the time that they went into Denton towards the end of last season. And make no bones about it, North Texas just really took it to a better team and just frankly beat the crap out of them and embarrassed UTSA, humiliated those guys, and put a small blemish on what otherwise would have been a perfect regular season for the Roadrunners, including their first conference championship. So I think there's definitely a lot of anticipation from UTSA players and coaches and fans to kind of get a little revenge, a little payback, getting back in the Alamo Dome, trying to even up this series. From an on-the-field perspective, I think the biggest questions are, can the Mean Green find a way to slow down UTSA's passing attack? I think most people that listen to this podcast are probably familiar with the UTSA quarterback Frank Harris, who's been one of the leading quarterbacks statistically in the NCAA this year, and he's got 3 incredible receivers to throw the ball to. JT Clark is a guy that's starting to make some splashes in NFL draft circles. Sakari Franklin has been just an incredible receiver for UTSA for a while now, and Josh Jephus has really made his impact at the slot receiver as well. You have all 3 of those guys in the field at the same time, and it's kind of a pick your poison scenario. So it's going to be a huge challenge for North Texas. And, the question of whether they'll be able to simultaneously get pocket pressure on Frank Harris without allowing him to use his legs to escape the pocket and do some damage, running the ball as well. For the Roadrunners, I think the biggest question mark is, can they match the physicality that the Mean Green offense has shown in the past 2 seasons here? I think the Mean Green are really doing a good job of embracing their strengths, bringing a power running attack to a conference that doesn't see a whole lot of it. I think most teams in Conference USA are happy to spread the ball out, ding and dunk down the field with some screen passes a little bit out on the edges, and take their deep shots when it's available. But North Texas is really happy to pull their guards and tackles on, kind of GT power plays, counter runs, and just really let the running backs get on space and lower their shoulders and deliver a blow. We've seen UTSA's defense kind of struggle with their tackling form a bit this year. At one point, they were the lowest ranked team in tackling grade in the nation on Pro Football Focus. So we've seen them clean that up a little bit in the past couple of weeks, but I think the physicality and the speed and the power that UNT brings to the running game is going to be an even bigger challenge for UTSA to keep those tackling issues under control. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. I think that's the biggest question mark for UTSA. I think they're probably the more talented team on paper. I think their resume is a little bit more impressive than UNT is this year. But can they answer the bell when it rings? Of physicality and violence that UNT is going to bring into this game. So I'm really excited to see how both teams compete. I'm excited for this rivalry to continue to pick up steam. We've seen both fan bases going back and forth on Twitter quite a bit this week, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So that game will be broadcast on Stadium. If you guys manage to find that stream, always just go and watch stadium.com and watch it there, but I'm sure it's on other outlets. If you want more coverage of this game, please be sure to check out our podcast, Alabama Audible. You can go to alabamaaudible.com or search for Alabama Audible on your podcast platform of choice. And we've got a lot of coverage of the game on our website, on our podcast. Hope you guys will check it out. You can give me a follow on Twitter at JaredUTSA. So thanks again to the Group of 5 Focus podcast for the opportunity to come on and share a little bit of preview. And I hope the game turns out to be as good as we're expecting it to.
There is a Texas-sized rivalry in Conference USA as the Mean Green of North Texas travel down to San Antonio to play the Roadrunners of UTSA. And guys, I don't think out of the history of the rivalry between these two teams that there's ever been more on the line than there is this year. Both teams sit atop Conference USA with a 3-0 record, and UTSA is in pursuit of their second conference championship, going back to back from 2021. They were the 2021 champs, and they're trying to do it again. And North Texas is in pursuit of their first conference title since being in Conference USA. Both teams, this is both of their last years with the conference, as they're both moving to the American in 2023. So, this is the last hurrah for these teams to win this conference. And mathematically, whoever wins this game is probably going to have a good chance of being in that championship game come December. So, again, stakes are very high. These teams have a deep dislike for each other, even though the rivalry is young. It's just there's no love lost between these two teams, and the coaches have it out for each other. It's really a premier G5 rivalry, and from a North Texas perspective, you got to lean on that run game, and you got to test UTSA and their unwillingness to tackle in practice, and hope that you can just out-muscle them and see if the run game can just pound away. And then, Austin Ani, UNT's quarterback, just pull back and make the passes when needed. For UTSA, though, if they shut down that run, that takes away North Texas is bread and butter on the offensive side of the ball. As a North Texas fan, kind of things to be skeptical or fearful about is Frank Harris and his arsenal of receivers that he has. I mean, it really truly is. Man, if you're a G5 football fan and you remember the 2007 Hawaii Warriors when they had Colt Brennan and the Dreadheads, it's not to that level of a passing attack, obviously, but they just got some really good receivers. So probably the best receiving core in all of G5, in my opinion, with one of the best QBs in the nation. I mean, this Frank Harris is. Yeah, I could go on and on about how he can make this a very long game for North Texas, but the odds are out. I think UTSA is currently at a 9.5 point favorite for this game. Last year they were a 13-point favorite when they were 11-0, and North Texas pulled off the upset and spoiled their perfect regular season record. That game was in Denton. It was rainy, and North Texas just ran it down their throats. So we'll see what happens this year. I think it's going to be I think it has the ingredients to be a really good game. I'm excited for it. I know both fan bases hate the other fan base, and they're both ready for this Saturday and are just chomping at the bit to get the ball rolled out, and hope that their team comes out ahead. And for North Texas' sake, though, a loss here, it kind of puts Coach Luttrell, who's been the head coach of this football team for 7 years now, kind of puts his job in a bit of a question mark. He's kind of played his way out of there. It was kind of getting questionable at the beginning of the season. But here we are sitting at 3-0 in conference play. So he's kind of in a good spot. So he really needs a quality win to cap this, to keep the momentum going for this season. We haven't had a quality win yet. So a win over UTSA would do that. And, again, UTSA trying to build a dynasty as we leave the Conference USA. So we'll see. It should be a good game. It's one that you want to catch if you can, and we'll see what happens.
All right, that's a great breakdown from those guys as always. Really appreciate their insight, and there's not much new I can share, not much new light I can shed on this rivalry that these two gentlemen don't know or didn't already say. I'll just say that I'm really excited to see what happens here. I really enjoyed hearing from Jared in my off-season episode, in my conference realignment or introduction episode, where we sort of went really in depth on UTSA, talking about the good things that are happening there under head coach Jeff Traylor. I think that the Roadrunners are on an incredible trajectory as they transition to the American Athletic Conference next year. I think that they are poised to almost immediately compete for the top. And honestly, I would still say that if the teams that are leaving the American were staying there. I really have a lot of faith in Roadrunner Nation, Meet Nation. I think that they are doing really good things there, especially under Coach Traylor. As long as he stays there, I think that, or as long as at least his impact is felt there, I think that they're in really good shape. North Texas is a team that I am still familiarizing myself with, but what I do know is, aside from them having an incredible marching band, I do know that they are a force in Conference USA and that they are one to be reckoned with and one to be respected. So this is, and that is clear in their record as well, right? North Texas is coming in at 4-3 overall, but 3-0 in conference. Also at 3-0 in conference are the Roadrunners of UTSA. So these two teams are at the top of Conference USA, and this game, depending on how things shake out, under them with UAB or Western Kentucky, or even Florida Atlantic, who's sitting at 2-1 right now in conference. We'll see how the rest of it plays out, but as of right now, these two teams are at the top of CUSA. They control their own destiny, and they have all-star players to take them to the top. I can't go without mentioning Frank Harris of UTSA, the quarterback, who's got over 2,300, or maybe exactly 2,300 passing yards on the season, 15 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Good ratio there. He's obviously a very skilled player, a playmaker, and that shows in the statistics as well. UTSA is a pass-heavy team, 343 passing yards per game compared to their 145 rushing yards per game. So no disrespect to the Roadrunners' running game, but it is clear that UTSA is a pass-first team, which contrasts very interestingly with the Mean Green of North Texas. North Texas is averaging more yards per game than UTSA is, and it's much more balanced. It's almost exactly even, as a matter of fact. 253 yards passing per game and 251 yards rushing per game. So the Mean Green have a very balanced offense. They're gaining yards very well, but their defense is also giving up a ton of yards. Where they're gaining 503 yards per game, they're giving up 468 yards per game. So, and that's shown in the points as well. On average, North Texas is scoring 36 points per game, but allowing 35. So that 3-0 in conference is a great start. But the defense really needs to improve for North Texas in order for them to have a chance to play for the conference championship this season. UTSA has a bit of a wider gap between points per game and points allowed, with 36 points per and roughly 30 points allowed. So a little bit more of a gap there. The defense is holding up, particularly their rushing defense is doing very well this season. But the Roadrunners are going to, as long as Frank Harris can stay healthy, their quarterback, then they've got a shot in this game. But if they lose him for any reason, then I just hope that whoever they've got at backup, that they're ready to jump in and make a big impact as well. So again, I think this is going to be an excellent game. This is a rivalry game. These two teams are. They've played since 2013, so it's not a historic rivalry necessarily, but it is fairly even. North Texas has the edge 5-4 in their 9 overall meetings, including and North Texas had the win last year in Denton, 45-23. So I think UTSA is up for the equalizer here this year. So my prediction for this game is that it's going to be a close one, but I think UTSA is going to get the win, 36-38. I wouldn't even be surprised if this game went to overtime or went down to the wire. I think these two teams are very evenly matched, and I think this is going to be a great game, and that's why it is my Group of 5 matchup of the week. Thanks for joining me this week on the Group of 5 Focus podcast. Reach out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at G5FPod to join the conversation and let me know what you think about my picks and previews. And if you haven't already, please follow, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice. And be sure to share it with your favorite Group of 5 fans and maybe some of your least favorite too. That's all for this week on the Group of 5 Focus podcast. Special thanks to Jared Kalmus and Sonoe Valente for their help this week. Be sure to check out the episode description to find their Twitter handles and links and give them a follow to keep up with all things UTSA and UNT. Until next time, my question for you is, what is one thing you can do to showcase the power of the Group of 5?